So welcome. Today's a bit different. Usually I tinker or I go on an economy run. This is none of that. This is a story, I suppose. Yeah, story time. Why not? Very simply, I've been considering for many months now the thought of upgrading this car. Not the car itself, but going from a 1.6 litre HDI with 110 horsepower to a more powerful engine. Why is that? Well, I explained in the video review of this car. It's a good engine. Is it right for this car? These 110 horsepowers begin to feel a bit insufficient. And the thing is, it's not like I don't like this car. It's in fact quite the contrary. I absolutely adore this car. This car is brilliant. I wouldn't have any other car right now. And the fact that we're going to change to a car, the same car with a different engine, proves that I like the car. It's just the engine that's the shortcoming. Now, the engine I want is the 2 litre diesel. First off, because it's more or less common in this country. The 2.2 litre diesel, that's very rare. The 2.7 litre diesel, I think I've never seen one. And the 3 litre diesel is just too rare, big, expensive, and it's an automatic, and I prefer a manual. The 2 litre diesel is the best balance. It's got a powerful engine. I want the 164 horsepower version, 163, I don't know which one is the correct number. I want a 6th gear because that makes motorway cruising a lot easier. And also, it's very rare in this country to find one of these 2 litres without hydro pneumatic suspension, which is a good thing because I want hydro pneumatic suspension. I miss it. I've missed it ever since I had my BX many years ago. So there's that extra. Now, as I said, I've been considering it for months and months. And then finally a couple of weeks ago I thought, no, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to make this a project. I'm going to make it happen. And I thought of a way to pass this car on to the next owner. Maybe part exchange, maybe selling it by myself. I wasn't really keen on selling it like on the equivalent of Gumtree in England or Craigslist in America, because then you get those ridiculous offers of people phoning up, some criminal from God knows where, saying they'll offer you half the money and tell them to get lost, and they get really angry at you, or someone wanting to exchange it for an absolute wreck. I've had that before. Yeah, so I wasn't too keen on that. However, skipping ahead, I actually did put this car up for sale. Within a day, I was approached by 2 people via text messages. They made me offers that I was happy to accept. One of them was ready to come the next day and get the car off my hands, but I didn't do that because the car I wanted to buy, that just didn't go through. That just didn't pan out. Why? I'll tell you in just a moment. In relation to the cars I was looking for, I had whittled down my choices to 2 cars. One was a 2010 silver Tourer with 164 horsepower. Unfortunately, it did have leather seats, which is something I really don't want, but it did have 168,000 kilometers, which is rare for a car of that age. And cars like these, these are Tourer cars, these are cars for long distances, so usually they have well over 200,000 kilometers, at least at that age. Anyway, I asked about the mileage, and they said it had an engine swap, and the original engine had 300 and many thousand kilometers. And my mechanic said, well, why did they swap the engine? And I said, I don't know, didn't ask them. And he said, you've always got to be mistrustful. Why they swap the engine? Maybe something else is wrong with it. Maybe the engine swap wasn't well done. He was right. So that car was sort of like put on the shelf. I don't know how you say it. I sort of like discarded that car as an option. And the other car that I was considering on my shortlist was a 2013 C5. 164 horsepower, just like the other one, or 63, don't know. Hydro pneumatic, blah blah blah. And that car I actually went to see to buy. But before I get there, the thing is, something happened in the meantime. At work, I suddenly had something to do. I had a place to go. It was a team meeting, and the team meeting would have lasted about a week. It would involve me traveling. So suddenly I had sort of like a deadline. I set myself that deadline. I thought, I want to have the new car by then so I can drive to where the team meeting was, 6th gear, stronger engine, and of course this car would have to be sold. As I mentioned earlier, selling this car turned out not to be a problem, but I actually was thinking of doing a part exchange just so I could get this car off my hands quickly. That would have been a bad idea, because I would have lost thousands of euros, 2,000 euros at least, in the exchange. So that was not a good idea. But that's the thing, if there's a moral here, I had put myself under so much pressure with that deadline. I'd set myself up to fail because I was making mistakes. Because when you're under pressure and time starts to run out, you start to get desperate. And when you get desperate, you do stupid things. This has happened before. When I sold my Volvo, got good money for it, then I was carless. And because I had no car, I was willing to get desperate. I felt like I couldn't go anywhere. And so I ended up buying a car that was absolute crap because of that desperation. It was a massive mistake. But anyway, that's over. Car is history. Thank God. I actually didn't get too much of a kick in the financial nether regions because I actually got good money in part exchange for the car, but I was just glad to get rid of the damn thing. So yeah, but with this it would have been worse. I would have been, I would have lost huge amounts of money. As I said, I set myself up for this idiotic deadline that I shouldn't have. Now that I'm on the subject, if there's anything you take away, don't do this, especially on cars, because cars are huge investments. There are extreme occasions where obviously you probably have to do quick purchases, and then it's a bit of a gamble. But in general, especially with big expensive things, don't get pressured. Don't get pressured, and that was a mistake I made. So that's a lesson to you all. You're all grown-up people who probably don't need lessons from me, so apologies for that. Anyway, just want to tell you the quick story of the other car that I went to see, and it's one of those cautionary tales of crooked salesmen. So, saw this car online, great condition, beautiful paintwork, 2013, and the price was sort of like in line with cars that were 3 years older. But anyway, that happens because sometimes you get people with cars on their lots and they're just desperate to get rid of them, so they will lower the price. This I've seen many a time before. But either way, I was wary because this could be too good to be true, so I thought, maybe I should be careful. Anyway, but because of that desperation, actually halfway through I did consider buying it because I wasn't thinking straight. But we'll get to that in a minute. First off, I phoned the guy, talked about the car, and I asked him about the age of the car because it seemed to me he made a mistake in the advert. What happens is, in adverts here, people cover up the number plate. Now, I've heard that people cover up number plates when they sell the car, so someone else can't go online that has a similar car that's been wrecked, and they can buy parts for that car, that wrecked car, using your number plate. So basically, your number plate's clean, and then it's got a register of having to have parts for it when it didn't need it. Don't know if that makes sense, but doesn't sound really plausible, to be honest. Doesn't really hold water. The real reason is, and I'm sure this is the real reason, by the way, is that people just don't want you to, if you're selling a car, many people are dishonest and they don't want you looking up the number plate and checking out the car's history. This guy had done that. He had covered up the number plate, but he hadn't done a good job of it, and you could see the date on the side. Now, cars here in Portugal used to have the date between 1998 and 2020. They had the date on the right hand side on a yellow background, and I could see 1303s, and the advert said December 2013. The number plate, that 03, that was March. So I challenged him on it, and he was like, oh, mistake on the internet, blah blah blah, some rubbish excuse. But I thought nothing of it. Mistakes are made. He was, by the way, he was a professional car salesman, so he had other cars on his lot, and you could have made a mistake, sure. Went and saw the car. Or at least I thought I was going to see the car, but it turned out I had gone to the wrong place because the advert had the wrong address. This guy had two lots. One of them was being refurbished, and he put the wrong one on the advert. And I ended up doing about 40 kilometers out of town, which is about 30 miles, round about there. And the lot was actually not too far from my house. So I was a bit annoyed, rang him up, told him, and he said, oh, I'm so sorry. He was very apologetic. He said, look, I've got a guy here to see the same car that you're going to see, and tell you what, you come over straight away. You've got first dibs on the car. You pay the deposit, the car's yours, if you like it, obviously. So I went there, rocked up. First thing he saw me was in my C5, and he thought, why do you want a car just like the C5 I'm selling? And I told him the truth. I just want a stronger engine, and I wanted that sixth gear and whatnot, and hydropneumatic suspension. Then I got in the car, went for a test drive. Things started to go a bit wrong. First off, the mileage. He had said on the advert it had 250,000 kilometers, when in fact it had 272. Why would he fib about that? Because 202,000 kilometers, it is a lot. It's about a year's motoring for me, but maybe not for everyone. And it was 250,000 kilometers. That's a high mileage car anyway. Why lie? Stupid. Also, the car was starved of oil. It showed up one of those warnings on the dashboard saying this car needs oil. And so the car was either leaking oil, it was burning oil, or it had come into his hands already with very little oil. And he had done nothing. This salesman had done nothing to address that. So that wasn't looking good. On the test drive, the brake squealed. I noticed that. And he said, I'm going to fix that. Don't worry, I'm going to fix that before I sell you the car. And I asked him if it had a service history, and he said, well, I can get you a service history. And I thought, that's a bit odd. Either you have it or you don't. Very weird. Thing is, because I was so desperate, I was actually considering buying this car, even though these red flags had popped up. As we went along, he also told me that the ownership, you've got a cost of 65 euros to transfer ownership from one person to another, and it's always the buyer that pays for it unless the seller actually says that I'll give it to you or something like that. And he said he would be willing to throw that in, those 65 euros, that 65 euro charge as well. And I thought that would be fine. Now, we went back to the office for a chat, and there was that other guy outside waiting also to have a go in the car, but that was dependent on if I were to put down the deposit and say I wanted the car. Went into the office for the chat, and it didn't go well at all. First off, I found out there was a 1,000 euro extra if I wanted a warranty. Now, this is not uncommon in this country. I don't know how legal or not it is, but it's very common for professional car salesmen to go online, advertise a price, doesn't matter what it is. You know, they'll write the description of the car, what it's got, all its, equipment, mileage, whatnot, history, things like that. At the very end, they will put a warranty under mutual agreement as an extra 1,000 euros over the price that's advertised, or 1,500, depends on each salesman. This guy, however, he had not put that it would cost extra money in the advert. He hadn't done that. So, I challenged him on that, and he was like, oh, by the way, I did say, I asked him about the mileage being wrong, 250,000 kilometers. He was like, oh, I don't know, mistake and whatnot. So it wasn't looking good for him. And then there was this of the warranty, the extra 1,000 euros. I wasn't really impressed. Anyway, I excused myself when I phoned up my mechanic to see if he could also dig up a bit of background on the car, because I had been with the car, I could see the number plate, and I passed it on to him. And he said, what about the service history? I said I didn't have one, but he said he's going to change the cam belt before he sold it to me. And he said, what, are you sure? He might not change the cam belt, and you'll only know when you go and change the cam belt the next time. Just, that's true. So he said, ask him for a discount over the price without the warranty, and we'll take care of the car ourselves. We'll change the pads, we'll do all that. And if he gives you like a 250 euro discount, we can do loads of stuff with that money. So I went back to him, proposed that discount, and he said, no, sorry, no. It's going to be the extra 1,000 euros, or I won't change the cam belt, or the oil, or the brake pads. So basically, he said he was going to change the cam belt and the oil and stuff, what he didn't say was he would only do that if I paid those 1,000 euros and got the warranty. Same thing for the ownership transfer. So this guy was, at the very least, very ethically challenged. This was not a good way of going about business, and I wasn't too happy with that. And I sort of let him know, because I'd have to pay a 500 euro deposit on the car if I wanted to keep it, and him not selling it to the other guy. And by the way, the fact the other guy was there, he was using that to pressure me. He was saying, if you don't buy it, that guy's going to buy it. And I didn't like that, because I've been in these situations before. In that particular situation, when someone's putting undue pressure, won't let you think. They're trying to get you to make a mistake. When I was an architect in another life, engineers and builders would do this a lot, and I wouldn't fall for it, because I knew if I did, I'd be stuffed. So I said, well, if I pay you the 500 euro deposit, and if I back out of the deal, will I get my money back? And he said, no, because I've begun to prepare the car for you. And I said, no, you'll only begin to prepare the car if I pay you the 1,000 euros, because otherwise you're going to leave it like it is. he said, yeah, but I'm going to lose customers and whatnot. It was absolute crap. It was absolute bollocks, that. And he was like, those €1,000, they're for you, so you get a properly nice car. And I said, well, I should get a properly nice car even without the €1,000 because you're selling me a car and you're a professional guy. Anyway, I decided not to go ahead and say, well, I want to sell it to the other guy. I said, fine. Small epilogue, he didn't sell the car to the other guy, or if he did, the other guy didn't show up and take it off his hands because it's still online. Furthermore, he did edit the advert to get the correct address, and also he changed the mileage to another lying mileage, 265,000 kilometers, which is still 7,000 less. Why you want to do that, beyond me. But again, this guy is a bit of a crook, as you can probably gather from what I'm telling you. When I got out, phoned up my mechanic, and he said, well, I looked up the car and it doesn't have an MOT. And I said, what are you talking about? I just went out in it onto public roads. So yeah, I told him, look, I'm not going to buy it anyway, so we'll consider another car. And this is something that's really struck a chord with me, because he said, don't buy another car, keep your car. Now, he had initially told me that it was probably a good idea to buy another car because of the stronger engine and such, but here he told me, no, look, don't buy another car, your car's in fine fettle, we've done a lot to it, we've made it absolutely fine. And he's right, the car is in great condition. Actually today I'm going to take it to him because there's a small leak down in the middle of the engine. It's very small, but I'm going to address that before it gets to an actual big problem that will make the car actually break down or something. So I'm going to take it to him. And this is something that I'm really glad, because over the many years I've had cars, it's always been very hard to find a nice mechanic, an honest mechanic, and someone who will look out for you. It's been awful. I've been to loads of mechanics and I've never been too happy. And finally I got a mechanic. He's also a Citroen specialist, so that really makes a difference. But I finally got a mechanic that's looking out for me. He could have let me get that new car, well, not new car, it's a used car, sorry. It'd be new for me, but in my life. But then he could have made a packet off me correcting stuff that was on that car, because that car, I believe, wasn't in good nick. Otherwise the guy wouldn't have been such a liar. He was desperate to get it off his hands. And he said, no, you're my customer, your wife's my customer, your neighbour's my customer, I want to see you happy with your cars. And that really, yeah man, that's really cool. Really glad of that. So anyway, so yeah, if you've got a good mechanic, you know, hold on to them, because they're really hard to come by. I'm really thankful for having this mechanic. Thanks, Americo, you're a really cool mechanic. And yeah, that's the other moral of the story. Good mechanics are hard to come by, so if you do have one, stick to them, you know, stick close to them, or don't let them get away, I don't know. So yeah, even if by the way, even if I do get another car that isn't a Citroen, I'm still going to go and pay him a visit. Of course, that's very improbable that I'll get a non-Citroen, at least in the foreseeable future. And speaking of the foreseeable future, this project of upgrading to a 2-litre diesel isn't dead. It hasn't gone away, but I'm going to take my time. Let the holidays go by, the summer holidays, then in the autumn, the winter, I don't know, 6 months, something like that, I'll revisit this project, see what's available, and then consider whether it's worth swapping the car or not. I'm in no hurry now. I'm going to make the most of having a very reliable and very durable car, and also keeping it in fine fettle makes it easier to sell as well. So I'm going to make sure this car is always in top-notch condition, and I envy the person who's going to get it off me one day. Anyway, that's enough. It's gone on for much too long. If you made it this far, thanks very much for watching. I hope it wasn't too boring, and I hope to see you in a future video, and I bid you farewell.